you always WiMAX? Was that a vision in your eye?
WiMAX is an edible, now it's the older technology. But no, we did pre-WiMAX, our basic proprietary technology. In 2000, we were testing, everything from current networks, the old adaptive broadband, and then you had the other people come in like Redline, Varion. Some of them all had different names, but there's a lot of different companies doing it back then.
Well, we really appreciate you guys bringing in the service for us. We've been using it, and we're hoping to enjoy this for the whole time, and we want to thank you very much. And with that, I'll get out of your way and let you speak.
Great, no problem. I'm near the end of the day here, so I think I'm holding up the drinks, so I will try not to be too long. I'll try to be nice and brief. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about PowerStream to give you the basics in case you don't know who you are. My name is Jeff Thompson, I'm the President and CEO of PowerStream. And PowerStream, start with the basics, like I said, we deliver high-speed internet access to businesses. We do it wirelessly. We do it in the top 9 markets in the U.S. So that's a little bit of background on PowerStream. We go after big markets. A lot of people in this space went after smaller markets or more rural environments. PowerStream goes to bigger urban markets. We use 4G technology for what we call the Q1 replacement market. That's typically customers 5 megabits and below. What's great about PowerStream's model, and I'll stop talking about PowerStream after this slide and talk more about 4G and stimulus. But what's great about the model is wireless technology. It's a very high margin business. 4 of our markets have over 80% gross margins, and with a monthly recurring revenue model, it's a pretty exciting business to be in. We own and control our network, which is very important. We're not held up by the traditional legacy phone companies that would typically get in the way of the CLEC industry. So we're a facilities-based company. We build our own metro backbone in each market that we go to, and then we build our wireless network on top of that. And we have a very simple, focused business model. We only deliver broadband. We don't do any other applications. The inside joke in PowerStream is that we sell t-shirts, small, medium, and large, and they're all black. So let's talk about stimulus, or grants, or really money is what we're talking about here, right? Why do we need a broadband stimulus program? Well, the number one thing is to elevate us all to, I actually took this quote right out of the NTIA NOFA, and that said, expanding access to broadband for all Americans. So that's the number one reason that they're trying to give out this money to build up these networks. And there's a lot of confusion over the different programs, BTOP versus BIP. BTOP, to give you a little bit more on this definition, is the Broadband Technology Opportunity Program. And there's 2 sets of groups that are actually doling out the money. You have the RUS and you have the NTIA. And from my experience, I can tell you, I was going through the process and filing for these applications, filing for grants money, is that we went after the BTOP side, and we were going after unserved markets. There's a lot of different things that are available. There's loans, there's grants, there's debt, I guess. There's all sorts of different combinations. But in the grant process, you have to match at least 20%. And what are the benefits for the country, for businesses, for consumers? And one of the main reasons stimulus was created was to create jobs. And we think that broadband is a great way to create jobs. Not only with PowerStream, we're to get some of this grant money at the end of this year, we'll be hiring people the next day. Then we're going to certain markets and hiring other people in one of these markets we went to. But also about productivity. A lot of other economies, a lot of other countries are using broadband to boost their economies. And if you can make businesses more productive, then they can sustain jobs, meaning they don't have to fire people as they become more profitable, as they become more productive. Or as they become so productive, they actually need more people. So I think broadband is a great way to generate jobs. Another benefit by getting more broadband out there, a lot of the markets that we go to, Verizon or AT&T have over 90% market share. And some of the unserved markets, there's only a single provider. And we all know that if you have one provider in one market, the prices can be high. If you you have 2, it's going to be a little bit lower. If you have 4 people supplying broadband in the market, the prices will come down dramatically. So that's also a great thing for all businesses and all consumers to have more broadband out there. Underserved or unserved. This was a huge topic for the stimulus grants. There's about $300 million going out to map out the broadband penetration rates, and so people know what markets are unserved and unserved. You kind of had to file your application before that mapping project was complete. So there was a little bit of a difficulty for companies that were filing for this to track down private data, third-party data, while they're using your own things to look at. But one of the key items for the underserved was less than 40% uptake in a census block. So that's one of the definitions. The other was no advertised speeds of 3 megabits or higher. And there's a lot of other rules on the rural side, but we did not file on the rural side, so I won't say that I'm not quite an expert on that portion. The process is, we're past the filing date, which was supposed to be the 14th, but it was extended a week. But it was a pretty large task for any company. Powerstroom's, a small medium business itself, but we had basically a war room ready as soon as this notebook was put out there, and we sat there for weeks, working through the weekends, trying to get these 17 applications in. I gotta think this was a very daunting task for a really small business trying to get some of this money. But it was a key item for people is kind of not, it doesn't seem like the way they look in the guide, but this was startup money. This was people that are shovel ready, that are proven business models, sustainable business models, and could get this stimulus out there. Another key item for people that are taking this grant money was a 20% match, which I think is fantastic. If people are going to take grant money and take taxpayer dollars, that they're going to put some of their own skin in the game. So that was a great item. So I think everyone got through the application process. It was a very difficult process, very time consuming, a lot of just hard detail work. But what happened? Organizations applied. About 260 applied for the infrastructure portion, and that's basically what Powerstream applied for, actually building networks. There were cities, there were towns, nonprofits, very money. So we'll have to see. That was just the first tranche. There are 3 tranches, and this money does have to go out by September of next year. So how does it tie into 4G? Well, wireless is less expensive to deploy than wireline. I mean, that's why developing countries are doing this. It can deploy quicker, quicker and cheaper. It's also, a lot of people are saying that $7 billion to help build a broadband network was not enough money. And it's only 1% of the stimulus funds. But I think if you're building out wireless, which is much less expensive, then the government can actually get a lot more bang for their buck. So it is a package or a program that does mean a lot towards wireless. And what's great about 4G technologies are that they are future-proof. Just think about it right now. Wi-Fi, when it first came out, was a technology that was about 6 megabits. Now it's doing over 200 megabits over these years. So you have a technology that can be improved upon and grow and still be standardized. There's lots of different applications in mobility, portability. Just wiring a single building with this stimulus money is one thing and very expensive, but it's just a wired building. If you have a wireless network, you invite a lot more applications, not only mobility, but also even just portability. How many people here have Wi-Fi in a notebook computer in this room? I mean, you can't get a notebook without Wi-Fi, and basically I think a notebook would be useless without Wi-Fi. And that's where we're heading with these types of network rollouts. You'll have a basically Wi-Fi-like enabled device or notebook, whatever. I think I've discussed this enough, but wireless offers a fast rollout. It's much easier to roll out and put 4 or 5 base stations over a census block group and cover all those rooftops or cover all the consumers in that market than it is to wire every single building. You look at some of the fiber rollouts that are 4 times over budget and 10 years past due. It's a much more elegant way to roll out. And back to the whole stimulus package is that it's going to create jobs we should be deploy it quicker. So what's next? Well, obviously we'll have to find out who are the grant winners for the first tranche, which we should find out this year. We have the second and third tranche to go through. A lot of people think there's going to be a lot of discussion about some of the guides and rules that were set for unserved, underserved. A lot of people were complaining about the application process. It was done relatively quick for government work, and there are some parts of the note that kind of contradict each other, but they were trying to get a lot accomplished all in one document. So you kind of had to expect some things that weren't going to make too much sense as some items would underline and make the other items less important, although they're all trying to do the same thing. So I think you'll see a little bit of change in the second and third tranches as people apply. And then hopefully we get to deliver these networks out there and start actually stimulating the economy and generating jobs and giving people access to broadband and give them actual choices. I promise I'll be brief because I prefer to just have answers, question and answer, and then I can talk about this relatively soon. So I don't want to hold anybody up, but let's start with some questions.
So the stuff you're deploying today is WiMAX?
But like I mentioned earlier, we have 3, our t-shirts come in small, medium, large, and the 5 megabits and below is typically what we call the tier 1 replacement market, a tower stream. And that's where we use WiMAX technology. 5 to 15, we use proprietary technology, and after 15 megabits, we use traditional common carrier point-to-point technologies.
And what are you using for this building here? What's up in the roof here?
That's proprietary technology because it's actually can go much faster than that 5 megabits that yes, you guys are all enjoying this great broadband here today.
So it's a point-to-point link to where...
It's a multi-point technology, but it's not official WiMAX according to the profiles. You have to stick to those very tight profiles.
So future standard perhaps.
It could someday be considered a WiMAX profile. We'll see.
Okay. So can I bring it back to the stimulus package, and I've got to be careful what I ask you, since I'm not allowed to ask you anything. Any thoughts about Senator Hutchison's bill looking for tax credits to augment the stimulus?
That's out of Texas, right?
Yes.
Actually, there's a lot of stuff that was a lot of things we applied for are pretty much similar to that what we requested there, but the one item that gets a little confusing is you start having all these different ways of tax credits and all these different instruments. I'm more like Warren Buffett. These really detailed financial instruments can confuse people where you want people to just deploy, right? They need money, they need CapEx, they need to build a network, they need to get customers for it to be sustainable. And the quickest way for that is grant money. I think you're almost getting a tax benefit because there is a matching grant there in a way.
So absent any other questions, I'll ask you, the other thing she cares about is unserved and underserved. And you, in effect, are in the underserved category is how I would place you. Given the fact that after the grants are supposedly issued, the local service providers are allowed to challenge the grant being authorized. Any thoughts about what you expect there and what that holds?
Yeah, that's I keep hearing about that, but as I was reading through the note, the details of that are not very clear. It's a weird item. So some of the large providers that would be typically the incumbent that are not getting that 40% penetration didn't apply. It would be unusual for them not to apply and then to say we're going to, say that there's broadband there. Or let me put it another way. We're not going to apply for any funds to help build this network to give access to all Americans. But when someone wants to deploy all these Americans, they're going to put a hand up and say, don't deploy to all Americans. It's almost un-American. So it's a very interesting thing that people would say, we don't want $7 million to go out to deploy broadband in these unserved markets. We didn't apply to help do it, or we're going to say we don't want you to do it. I don't understand.
Glenn, you got any enlightenment here, or Bob?
I mean, the only thing I would add is, I mean, as I understand the process, they're going to put all the applications for the broadband networks on a system that you can look at what markets are served, but not the details of what's in the applications, and then the carriers and the cable providers will have 30 days to basically put up a challenge to that. The problem is, as I understand it from the workshops, is that you don't get a chance to rebut. So if you didn't make your best case in your application, it's going to end up getting thrown back to the agencies to basically decide, did you make the case in your application, and is there enough information being provided by the challenging service provider for me to go out and make a decision? RUS has suggested they're actually going to send people out to the field in some of these markets where they can't determine based on the information provided. But, I would sort of challenge your point, though, about the carriers not applying themselves. There are a lot of reasons people wouldn't apply for that money, and one is the 60 pages of compliance and audit rights and all the no resale requirement. You can't sell the network. I mean, there's a lot of strings attached to that money. So if you're a publicly traded company that's got to answer to shareholders, I would be sort of questioning whether you really want to take any of that money. Just like the banks found with the TARP money, they didn't want that money very long, did they? So, I'm not one who sort of agrees with that idea, but I would be very concerned that in any underserved market that there will be challenges. And, frankly, it doesn't hurt them to challenge because, frankly, if they can get your application thrown out, you're one less competitor.
Carla?
There will be also a negotiation period. If your grant passes the first hurdle, which basically says you have everything in it, then they'll sit and talk to you. So if there is a conflict,
The due diligence phase, correct?
the due diligence phase, you have a negotiation back and forth.
That wasn't my understanding from the workshops. That, maybe that's evolved.
That was my understanding.
Right. But that's
That's what they told us.
Okay, well, I was the first one. Things may have evolved over time, but as I understood it, it was basically you better put everything into your application because you may not get another chance to rebut if someone challenges your unserved or underserved designation.
I don't think that it would be like saying that these people on these boards can give themselves raises. I mean, they can't just say we don't want you in there and there's no rebuttal whatsoever. People have to be reasonable about this. And from what I understand, it's more of this, you get through the process in the end of September saying that you did fill out everything properly, there's nothing that threw you out, they are going to rank, stack, file them, and then you do get through the due diligence process. You can even make your case more, or you can also, originally it was not going to be as much, people lobbying for the local government, and then they put this whole section in that the local state can make suggestions on who they prefer to get this money. That's right in there. It's right in the notebook. The states are going to have some say on this.
That's right. So don't forget that a number of those states and localities have also applied for the same money.
Yes, they have.
So, it's going to be interesting to see whether, what their role will be. I know of a number of it already announced that they put in fairly substantial. I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. I think they put in for $100 million, some incredible amount of money. And so if somebody else has come in and is, in another area in the same county, is the state, do I want the state of Maryland as an arbiter of my, small publicly held company versus, the county or somebody else?
It's a great point. And one of the things that happened was because you went from NOFA to submission very quickly, there was almost no chance for people to do these partnerships that everyone was talking about. But a lot of these people that are applying for it don't want to be socialized. We've had a lot of government networks that haven't done so hot, or some of these for-free networks that have, for-free networks typically fail. So I think you're going to see some partnerships form out of this process with some of these local governments for people that really all they want is 100 megabits to the library. They had 4 weeks to get their submission, not a chance to get anything else in there. I think you'll see some partnerships develop, even through the due diligence process, as the final grants get awarded. People are going to have to work with their local governments. I mean, in our home state, we're working with the process they gave us and talk to them. It's going to be I don't want to say it's going to be a very liquid process for a while, but no one has the data of what's correct. There's no data threshold except for a few marks that we have in mapping. So it's going to be interesting, not only in the challenges, but also in some of the partnerships that are formed. Some of these people submitted a lot of the local governments submitted a lot of computer center stuff. There's only 260 applicants for infrastructure. So only 10%, a little over 10% out of 2,200.
I thought it was closer to 1,200. I thought it was 800 for the for the RUS and 400 for NTIA.
It was 260 for infrastructure.
Just that one option,
yeah. For there's infrastructure, there's sustainable broadband, and the computer centers out of the BTOP. And out of the infrastructure, and BTOP 260.
So, unless, how many people here care about the stimulus? Raise their hand. Okay, for the rest of us who aren't lawyers and me, let's take you back to the technology side of the equation for a moment. And as you look at the environment, given the fact that you've got some stuff that's WiMAX, some stuff that's not, what are you looking for in the future for wireless? Where do you want wireless broadband to go? Is there a specific goal you have in mind? Are you paying attention to white spaces? What are you looking for in the way of spectrum and control and that kind of stuff?
Well, that opens up a huge can of worms there. I recently went to the New America Foundation. We were talking about white space, but more importantly, the discussions start getting wrapped around smart radios, which are coming quicker than everyone thought. And typically, smart radios can make spectrum a very abundant resource, which it is. It's only scarce because of this auction.
Is that called cognitive radio too, for those of us?
It is a million phrases. I'm not a super radio guy, but it's basically radios can be smart enough to say that even in markets like New York, only 17% of the spectrum that's out there is being used at any one time. So that means that all this spectrum is being wasted every single day. It's like radio ads. Once it goes away, you can't get it back. So with smart radio technology, you can really have huge amounts of bandwidth and not limited by spectrum. It's not that far away. The military is using some of these types of items. But to go back to your original question, what Tower Tree wants is, it's interesting, when Tower Tree first got the business, doing 45 megabits was a huge ordeal, and multi-point technology could barely go over 1.5 megabits. And most small and medium businesses thought that they needed 5 or 6 megabits, even though still small and medium businesses don't use that much bandwidth. With processor speeds and all the new radio technology is not going to catch wireline. We're not going to go 40 gig tomorrow. But it's radio, bits per hertz, all these things, the throughput you can get on broadband connections now is way ahead of what most consumers or most businesses need now. We have colleges that are getting gigabits of broadband from us. The gigabit market is tiny, we all know that, but it's going to grow. For instance, our mid-sized product, they all want at least 8 megabits symmetrical and guaranteed with these different services and latency, things of that nature. They do spike up quite a bit. The average use is only 2.2 megabits. And that's what small and medium businesses, and our average business is over 30 employees. So the usage and what people think they need, wireless in the last few years has surpassed what most businesses need to perform in quality broadband. But that doesn't mean that businesses are going to stay where they are. Businesses are going to need more and more bandwidth as everything's done online and everything turns into video and everything is, just like any processor. As soon as the processor gets up here, they design applications to slide your processor somehow. But wireless did take a huge jump in the last few years, where it jumped ahead of what most businesses will ever need. And now to stay ahead of that curve. It's not going to catch wireline, and you're not going to be doing 40 gig data, data center type of transfers yet. Maybe when they're at 80 gig, we'll get to 40 gig, but wireless is now ahead of the curve.
Other questions from the audience? Okay, I get to ask another one, Jeff. Tell me about security issues. What's your big concerns? First of all, are there people who are trying to hack into you guys, just trying to find your frequency?
Security is very tough to get in here. It's really tough to get into these locations. They kept kicking me out. I didn't have the right tag. And so, yeah, security is very tough around here.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Just like the great thing about, I'll talk about WiMAX because, that was a hot button as the standard developed. I mean, basically you had 3G, which, was multiple miles, but very low bandwidths. You had Wi-Fi, which is, tons of bandwidth, only was 300 feet, but kind of security. WiMAX came in, it's not because they're smarter new technology. They came in and said, okay, you got Wi-Fi, and security problems, we're under 300 feet. What are some of the other standardized things we're doing? It just basically came in multiple miles, multiple megabits, with QoS, scheduled packets right in the standard, and security right in the standard. So we're going to start with security right in the standard. So it didn't have to kind of catch up like Wi-Fi, where everyone's breaking the Wi-Fi the first few years. The Wi-Fi's, I think, it's pretty secure on myself. But the standardized equipment comes with standard security.
What sort of growth are you seeing, or what, maybe you could tell us your history of folks buying your service for pure redundancy purposes, where they're dependent on another carrier for their wireline service? And what I mean by that is their data, wireline service. But they don't want to be down at all.
Right. It's very interesting because American businesses only buy redundancy when they have an outage. It's a very tough sell. People don't buy redundancy or cheap unless they really have a critical application that can't go down. TowerStream, 8% of our customers use this as the primary. Now, what's interesting on a lot of our higher cap services that are getting 100 megabits from us, or 200 or a gigabit, is you're simply sitting next to another provider in a BGP configuration, and it's not like one's the primary, one's it's going to choose the best route. And lots of times we actually get that traffic because the way we design our network, we get you off the network as quickly as possible. Where some of the tier 1 folks will take you to where they have a free peering arrangement, so they can dump the traffic off in a place where they have a free peering arrangement. It doesn't cost them anything. Well, we'll pay for the transit, and you can get a faster route because of that. So, for instance, if I'm in LA and I'm a tier 1 provider, my handoff to, say, CNN is on a different network, and the person I peer with is up in Washington State, I'm going to drag you up to Washington State, or even Washington, D.C., I'm going to drag you there and hand off.